Osborne's budget under fire. A respected think tank warns the richest will benefit the most and some of the poorest will actually lose. There's unhappiness on his backbenches at planned cuts to benefits for the disabled and a warning that he only has a 50-50 chance of hitting his surplus target.
Also tonight.
Ball in the cup, you can't be in the pocket. In the pocket, you can't be in the can at the same time as on the cup. If, on the other hand, the ball and the cup are together, and the cup... You're not following this, are you?
Paul Daniels, TV magician and entertainer, dies of a brain tumour at 77.
Terrorists may target cafes and hotels as well as football stadiums, warns the head of security for Euro 2016.
And soaring towards movie stardom, Eddie the Eagle Edwards on turning heroic failure into a Hollywood blockbuster.
This is the ITV Evening News with James Mates and Ranveer Singh.
Good evening. The Chancellor's budget is being hit by a growing backlash tonight over fears that it hurts the disabled and the poorest the most. Some of George Osborne's own MPs say planned cuts to disability benefits go too far and are threatening to derail it.
The respected think tank, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, says new measures announced yesterday benefit the richest more than the poor. It also questioned whether Mr Osborne could put Britain's finances back in the black by 2020. From Westminster, here's our political editor, Robert Peston.
Oh, there we go. Right, come and tell me about the PE, yeah?
A Chancellor who didn't drop the ball this morning at a school in Leeds. But were there a couple of big fumbles in his budget? A failure to get the public finances properly back on track and a lack of fairness in who George Osborne took money from and who he rewarded?
Oh, there you go. Be on the news with that. In this budget, we hold Britain to the courses it is set out. We make sure in uncertain times we are fit for the future. We do that by taking action on our public finances so we don't pay later. And we back small businesses, the self-employed, above all working people, by reducing their taxes so they can help us grow the economy.
The financial acrobatics of the Chancellor are supposed to reward work, enterprise and the poorest. But the Institute for Fiscal Studies says he wasn't doing all of that yesterday. It says the long-term impact of the tax and benefit reforms he announced would be to make the poorest 10% of us a tiny bit poorer, while the richest 10% stand to become more than £250 per year better off. Now, most economists would say that shift of income from the poor to the rich isn't massively significant, but it is politically controversial because the Chancellor is taking £1.2 billion away from the disabled in benefit reductions.
He's cut disability benefits. People, employment support allowance, the personal independence payment, cut them by large amounts, £100 a week. And he's used that to pay for cuts in capital gains tax to the richest 5% in our society. I think that's morally unacceptable.
This is a Chancellor whose flagship policy is generating a surplus by the end of this Parliament. How likely is it that he'll achieve that?
I reckon he's probably got about a 50-50 shot at the moment. He could easily end up with some more forecasts going in the wrong direction. If that happens, he'll have to make some really tough decisions to actually hit the target of a surplus.
Which one's the most exciting lesson?
The lesson for the Chancellor may be, don't cut taxes for the better off while reducing payments to the disabled. Robert Peston, ITV News.
Well, those cuts in disability benefits will affect 370,000 people and leave them around £3,500 worse off a year. That's leading to a growing rebellion among Tories who are threatening to join Labour in stopping it. Our political correspondent Lewis Vaughan-Jones has this.
Sarah Stewart suffers from a neurological condition that means she can't move around very easily. She had to stop work, and so to help with the costs of her disability, she claims personal independence payments. Now, government changes mean the £73 she gets per week is due to be cut to £21.
Dismay turned to anger that they really are, it feels, picking on the ones that can't do anything about it. I mean, we are held to ransom by them.
Shame on them!
There has been plenty of anger about these cuts, and after yesterday's budget, several Conservative MPs now say their own Chancellor has got it wrong.
The personal independence payments, given the group that they go to, which are people who often have very significant needs, are unnecessary. We can find this money elsewhere in the system, and I think as a country we really should be protecting them at the level they are at the moment.
Labour's confident they can force a vote on this issue. If they do, the Chancellor could be in trouble. The main opposition parties are against him, so it would only take a small number of Tory MPs to rebel, and the government could be facing defeat. But defending its position, the government says overall spending on disability payments will still actually go up.
We want to provide a long-term sustainable benefit that helps those most vulnerable people in society who have those significant extra costs, and we will continue to do that in increasing numbers and increasing amounts of money in every single year in this Parliament.
But Sarah is still set to be one of hundreds of thousands of people who will lose thousands of pounds a year. Lewis Vaughan-Jones, ITV News, Westminster.
Well, our political editor Robert Peston is in Downing Street. Robert, it's less than 24 hours old, but is the Chancellor's budget unravelling already?
Well, it didn't have overwhelming support last night. You'll remember lots of people queried the numbers on the amounts that he was borrowing and whether there was some funny accounting going on. That said, I think it would be overstating it to say that it is unravelling as we speak. There is broad cross-party support for this levy on makers of sugary drinks. The Tories love the cuts in business taxes, business rates and income taxes. But there is growing unease across Parliament, including from Tories, as you have heard, with this decision to take £1.2 billion away from disabled people. And what MPs are saying to me is they find it surprising that George Osborne has gone down that route, given the humiliation he had in having to do a U-turn in reversing tax credit cuts for relatively poor people. For him to take money from another disadvantaged group, well, they regard it as rather extraordinary.
Robert, thank you very much indeed.
Paul Daniels, the master magician whose long-running TV show turned him into a household name, has died after a short battle with cancer.
The 77-year-old was diagnosed with a brain tumour just last month and passed away with his wife, Debbie McGee, by his side. Paul Daniels looked back at some of his magic moments.
He was the man who took traditional magic, added a touch of comedy and became a prime-time success.
If, on the other hand, the ball and the cup are together and the cup... You're not following this, are you?
For 15 years, his Paul Daniels magic show ran on the BBC.
My name is Paul Daniels and they call me an unusualist.
His career began in the clubs of Northern England. His famous catchphrase devised to counter hecklers.
You like this? Not a lot, but you like it. Just face that way.
Some of his illusions baffled television audiences, like making an elephant disappear. Those who followed today paid tribute to a master of his art.
Paul Daniels was a massive inspiration for myself as well as thousands of magicians across the world. He was probably the first introduction that many people had to magic, especially in England and the UK. Everyone I know had a Paul Daniels magic kit.
At the height of his fame, Daniels married his glamorous assistant, Debbie McGee. She was half his age. Like Daniels' toupee, their marriage became the subject of affectionate humour.
But what first, Debbie, attracted you to the millionaire Paul Daniels?
Despite the gentle mockery, their relationship, personal and professional, endured. And so did his popularity. Although after the BBC dropped his magic show, television appearances like this one as a contestant on Strictly became more rare. His family only recently revealed he had a brain tumour, Today, in a tweet accompanied by a crying white rabbit, his son Gary said, "It's with incredible sadness that I can confirm that Dad passed away overnight." His wife was at his side. He leaves 3 sons from his first marriage.
It's Paul Daniels, who died early this morning.
The head of security at this summer's European Football Championships in France has told ITV News there could be terrorist attacks on softer targets like hotels and bars. Ziad Khouri said there has been no direct threat, but they are preparing for the worst. A match in Paris was one of the targets during the deadly attacks in November. From there, our sports editor Steve Scott reports.
Football has been a target here once before. The fear now that terror will revisit when France welcomes European neighbours to its summer showpiece. The man charged with keeping everyone safe admitted to ITV News today that while current intelligence suggests no direct threat to the tournament, they are prepared for that to change.
Have you added layers of security recently because of the increased threat?
Yes, of course, because our security plans were very important. But the idea was to make them change according to the risk analysis. So that's what we have done. More explosive controls, more stewards, etc. But it's not transformation of the concept. The strategy was there. It's just that we have reinforced some measures.
Each match will be guarded by 1,000 police, many of them armed. Special forces and snipers will be deployed too. More vulnerable perhaps the fan zones, hotels and training grounds, anywhere else large groups gather.
We will do the maximum, but if you are serious talking about security, you can never guarantee 100% in any place. Even now we are talking, I mean, something could happen. But what I can guarantee is that everything that should be done has been done.
Comforting words maybe, but only 24 hours after anti-terror police made another 4 arrests, and on a day when politicians visited the Bataclan theatre where 89 died in November's tragedy. Reminders of the scale of the security challenge ahead are not hard to find here. Steve Scott, ITV News, Paris.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News, leaping onto the big screen, how Hollywood has fallen in love with the story of Eddie the Eagle.
That story and more after this short break.
Welcome back. With less than 100 days to go until the EU referendum, the latest now in our series on what impact Europe has on British industries. Fishing has had a long troubled relationship with Brussels, with some feeling the UK has lost out badly. Currently, fish stocks are flourishing, with the number of fish caught up 21%. The UK exports 66% of its catch to other EU nations, but it's not the only trading partner we have. 70% of the seafood we eat is imported, with China our biggest supplier. Our correspondent Martin Geisler has been to Peterhead, the UK's main fishing port, to hear if people there want to remain or leave.
Another catch comes ashore on Scotland's northeast coast. It's been a good year so far for these trawlermen, but they are the survivors in an industry that's been ripped apart. Not so long ago, boats would sit 2 or 3 abreast in harbours like Peterhead. Now the place lies all but empty. Skippers like Richard Watson blame Brussels and the restrictions bureaucrats have placed on their boats.
It just feels like a collar around your neck and you're being choked slowly. It just feels like they didn't win an industry. That's what I feel like. 55 barrels.
Plenty money changes hands in Peterhead's fish market, but it's not like it used to be. The catch here is limited by European quotas. Every year a British delegation goes to Brussels to negotiate what our fishermen can bring ashore. There's a widespread belief in the industry that Britain gets a bad deal and an anger that we don't control our own waters. But scientists will tell you the regulations have saved the fish and helped the fishermen.
We've seen exploitation rates decline year on year, and we've seen stocks beginning to recover. And as a result of that, I think fishermen will, in the long term, see benefits in terms of increased quotas.
The arguments expressed here are almost a microcosm of the whole debate over Britain and the EU. You could argue that rules and red tape from Brussels have strangled communities like this. But it's equally true that the British fishing industry relies on the continent for a massive amount of its trade.
This is cod for France. It'll be dispatched today by 2 o'clock and it'll reach France tomorrow by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Fish processor Graham Tallis does 80% of his business with French customers. He accepts a Brexit might make those deals more difficult, but he doesn't believe his business would suffer.
I don't think it'll change, to be honest, if we come out of the EU, because everyone needs fish, and Peterhead is the top quality fish, so they're always going to come here for fish. My opinion, I don't see it changing that much.
There's a strong sense of pride along this coast, and an anger too. People are quick to blame Brussels for their problems, but no one can know for sure if the solution is breaking away. Martin Geisler, ITV News, Peterhead.
Former entertainer Rolf Harris has pleaded not guilty to 7 further sex offences against girls as young as 12. The 85-year-old appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court via video link. He's already serving a 6-year sentence for sex offences against 4 other young girls.
Britain may be about to secure a deal to scrap the so-called tampon tax. The Prime Minister, who's in Brussels for a summit on the refugee crisis, raised the issue today with the European Commission President Claude Juncker. Our Deputy Political Editor Chris Shipp is there tonight. Chris, we understand this could be agreed within days.
Well, James, there's a big European summit going on here, as you say, principally about migration. It will go on late into the night, and there's no update to bring you on that at the moment. But there has been some movement today on this issue of VAT on tampons and other sanitary products. You may know, if you've been following this issue, it's currently levied at 5% on items I think most people will agree are not luxury items, and it can't be reduced to 0 because of an EU directive. Well, earlier, Mr Cameron collared the President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker. I think you can see the two men talking here. And Downing Street now says that it is hopeful, to use its words, that by the middle of next week, Britain may be given the flexibility to reduce the VAT rate to 0. Now, some MPs in Westminster have launched a campaign on this issue. It's also fed into the European referendum debate as well. I spoke to the UKIP leader Nigel Farage a few moments ago and said, look, he said to me, if we've got to beg Europe to do this, that's all you need to know about why we need to leave the European Union. But it looks like this might be some success for campaigners on this subject by next Wednesday, perhaps.
Chris, thank you.
And finally tonight, how Eddie the Eagle Edwards is soaring again. The plasterer became Britain's first Olympic ski jumper back in 1988. He finished last in every event at the Calgary Winter Games, but that only made him more popular. Now his heroic failure has been made into a Hollywood film. This report now from our sports correspondent Ian Payne.
Eddie Edwards was never as bad as he was portrayed. The Eagle did land after all, and on his skis. But with his giant glasses under his goggles, he was portrayed as a living cartoon, a Mr. Magoo. And Hollywood has cashed in on that image.
Champion! It's been my ambition.
A clumsy but lovable loser.
OK, hands up, that was my fault.
Meeting him today, I asked him if I should call him Michael, his real name, but he insisted on Eddie because he's embraced the caricature now, happily telling me, for example, how he accidentally walked into a glass door.
I arrived at Calgary at about 2 o'clock in the morning because our flight was delayed, and I was going towards these double doors with all my bags on a baggage trolley, and I thought the doors would open automatically, but they didn't because it was so late, and my skis hit the door and they all fell off and my bags fell off.
These days he's had to go back to plastering to supplement his income, but he also makes many PR appearances as the Eagle because he says that's what people want.
I've always, to some degree, embraced Eddie the Eagle, and I do love being Eddie the Eagle. It's great fun, and it's a great way to start a conversation. People always stop me in the street and say, "Oh, we loved what you did at Calgary." Yeah, even now. And now with the movie, of course, it's going to be poof, explosion. It'll be like Calgary all over again, but 1,000 times bigger.
He says he loves the film. This will be the 4th time he's seen it tonight, except for the portrayal of his dad, who, far from criticising him,
Eddie, you are not an African!
was very, very proud. And so, when tonight's red carpet movie stardom moments have come to an end, which they inevitably will, he says he'll go back to being Michael. Or is it Eddie? Ian Payne, ITV News.
We love an underdog.
Yeah. A reminder of our main story this evening. George Osborne has come under attack from his own side over budget cuts to disability payments. Around 20 Conservative MPs have written to the Chancellor voicing concerns about those cuts.
And that's all for now. Tom Bradby will be here later with the news at 10.
But from all the team here, have a very good evening. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.